Aine Collins, thank you very much for coming in to TheJounal.ie
Nice to be here.
Let's talk about entrepreneurship. You're big on entrepreneurship. You have a background in that area. Do you think the government's doing enough in the area of entrepreneurship? It's taking a lot of criticism, particularly entrepreneurs who perhaps try something and they fail and they need perhaps to go on the dole and they find it very hard to get access to social welfare and things like that. So could the government do more?
Yes, I mean, the simple answer is yes, the government could do more, and we will do more. The issue for people who fail, and I have said this before on the record, that I do hope that one of the good things that will come out of the whole recession is that the attitude to failure in Ireland will change, because we do need entrepreneurs because they are the future, and they're the people who come up with the ideas, who create the jobs, and that's really where the space needs to be. And we need to bring entrepreneurship into education, we need to bring it into schools, we need to make it part of every degree course in the country, so there's a lot more we can do there. In relation to people who fail and who need social welfare, as you know now, everybody only gets 9 months what's called stamps. That's not means tested. I mean, if you do fail in business, you can apply for social welfare, but you are means tested. So for example, if you're married and your partner is working, then you won't normally get it, the same way as if you're a PAYE worker now. And I think that needs to change, and the way we change that is that, and I know Joan Burton has done a study on this, that we increase the PRSI rate for self-employed people, and that would entitle them then to be entitled to the same entitlements as a PAYE. And I think we actually need to do more than that for the whole area of, and this is becoming an area that's been quite a lot talked about. I think we need to absolutely equalise the whole tax system. Whether you're PAYE or self-employed, everybody pays the same tax based on whatever your adjusted profits are. And I think that's a space we need to really get into. Entrepreneurship, there's definitely more we could do. We need to look at capital gains tax. In the north, it's and in the UK, it's 10%. If you sell on your company. Here at the moment, it's like, I think it's 25 or 30%. We have reduced that to 16.5%, but it's quite complicated because it's like the old rollover relief, and you kind of, we should just make it clean and make it open. We need to do more for investing. And I've been working on this quite a lot, the whole area of investing on entrepreneurs. So if I want to invest in your company, that I would get a tax credit for it. We did this with property. And what happened, of course, is that when we brought in all of those reliefs, we didn't stop them, when we should have stopped them. But I think we should bring it in for trading businesses. And that's a way of getting credit into early stage investment, which is high risk and very hard to tell the banks to invest in that when it's such a high risk.
Do you think it's a cultural thing as well, though, that perhaps Irish people are a little bit scared to kind of to get into this idea of starting their own business, but also that this almost begrudgery, like that other Irish people like to see people failing and kind of falling on their face kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of issues. There's an Irish mammy syndrome. We were all told to get a good job, get work in the get a good job in the bank or in the civil service or whatever the case was be. I don't think many Irish mammies tell their children to set up your own business, but I think we're changing, and that's important. And certainly, I think we'll see more of it. And we've had some fantastic results. From Enterprise Ireland just announced their results yesterday. For the highest time ever, we've had more women entrepreneurs, which is really, really positive. And they actually have a higher success rate than men, because they tend to be more risk, or less risk orientated, and there's a lot of study on that. So I think there is the whole area of begrudgery, but also there's a whole area of fear. In my previous career, I was an accountant, and we saw a lot of liquidations happen in the 2008, 2009. A lot of them not their own fault. Maybe people hadn't paid them and then they couldn't pay, and we know what happened. But it's very hard to stand up in front of creditors and tell them that you can't pay them. And I've seen, I've seen too many grown men cry, and it is very hard on people, so I think we need to be more open. In America, it's a badge of honour if you fail. And I think we need to have more conversations about it, but I really think we need to bring it into the education system. That, like, if you do a degree, we'll say, so I trained to be an accountant. Nobody showed me how to run a business. So all of that needs to be brought into dentists, doctors, no matter engineers, no matter what you do, that it's part, and I think in the US they have it, that a part of every degree you learn how to run a business, and I think that's something we could do. But there's a lot more we can do, and we will do it. And hopefully we'll see some of it in this year's budget.
Okay. Let's talk about politics. Labour's Aine recently blamed Fine Gael for all the mistakes that the government made in 2014. Is that fair?
Well, sure, life is wonderful if you always have somebody to blame for everything. We have a job to do. We were elected to do a job. Labour and Fine Gael are in government together, and we have to continue to do that job. We have a joint manifesto programme for government. We have to continue implementing that. I don't think blaming anybody for what mightn't be a good day in politics gets us anywhere. So I think we just have to continue on.
Okay. A minister as well told us last night that the party, Fine Gael, and I guess the government as well, was done apologising. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't think there's anything to apologise for when you create 80,000 jobs, you know.
What about Irish Water? McNulty,
Irish Water, they
Justice
were...
controversies?
Yes, they all happened, and they're all in the past, and we're now in 2015, and, you know, it wasn't a good year politically for Fine Gael. We've said that on numerous occasions, but, you know, I think the Irish public want to hear about things that really affect them, and what are the things that really affect people. You know, jobs, getting people home from Canada and Australia, people coming out of college, being able to get, you know, to be able to get training and all of that. That's what's important.
Do you think, though, electorally Fine Gael was sort of fatally damaged perhaps by the Irish Water controversy? I mean, do you worry for your seat now because of all the Irish Water controversies that we had in 2014? Do you think your position and the position of many other Fine Gael TDs is kind of permanently damaged by what happened last year, and particularly in relation to Irish Water?
Well, politics, there's no guarantee in politics. You know, I mean, Irish Water has now been dealt with. We would have preferred if it didn't happen, like every other controversy that happens, but in politics there's going to be a controversy. There's going to be issues this year. I don't know what they are yet, but undoubtedly some things will happen. But it's our job to govern, and it's our job to lead, and that's what we're elected to do. There's no guarantee that my seat, that I'll win it the next time around, no matter what happens. Obviously, the people of Cork Northwest will hopefully put their trust in me again, and let us continue and finish the job that we were asked to do.
Okay. Did it bother you when Aine Kenny essentially ignored women in the junior ministerial reshuffle?
Well, I said publicly on the record to you that time, I think it was on the lunchtime news, that I thought it was a missed opportunity. But, you know, you look at it and you stand back now, you know, the three arms of the state are the judiciary, the legislative process and the cabinet. For the first time in the history of the state, every member of the judiciary is female that makes a decision. In the legislative process, we still don't have enough women in Parliament, and hopefully we will change that with the quotas. We probably won't see a huge change in the next election, but I predict the election after that we will see it. And in the cabinet, we've had more women than we've ever had.
And were you personally bothered? I mean, were you personally thinking, well, I mean, like, even if I didn't get promoted, you know, surely he should have done something for women in the party.
Yeah, I said it at the time that I thought it was a missed opportunity. And we need to lead, and when you're leading, you have to, action speaks a lot louder than words. And but that's now done, and we have to move on. You know, I mean, if you look at the junior ministries, we reduced it from 20 down to 12, which I'm not sure. I think I'd be very much in favour of having more junior ministers and having more people working in the departments to help the ministers do their job, you know, but that's just my view.
I mean, that and the McNulty saga, you know, we've seen that women were being treated appallingly by Fine Gael in some quarters. I mean, there was, you know, Samantha Long, one of the people who was talked about from that Shannon seat, quit the party. And there was a lot of discussion at the time around the way Fine Gael is treating women. I mean, do you think it's treating women particularly poorly in the party? Do you think they're ignored, shunned?
No, I don't think that, and I'm a member of the party. I think it's a very busy place, and, you know, we have a lot of people in the party. Obviously we've got more male than female, and we'd like to see that change, and to be fair, we are trying very hard to do that, in the sense that, you know, we've set up you know, part of Fine Gael headquarters have set up a focus group on women. We're out there actively trying to bring women into the party. I even see it, you know, when I go around
would women have to come into the party when they see them being ignored in junior ministerial reshuffle, when they see the way the whole McNulty situation was handled? I mean, it doesn't really bode well for attracting women to join the party, does it?
You can look at it that way. You can also see, as I just said, the people, first time ever, Minister for Justice, you know, all the women in the judiciary, we have more women in cabinet. You know, I think it's about getting diversity. You know, that's where it's all at. You know, and we certainly need more women, but we need more women to stand. You know, when I go around to Fine Gael branch meetings, pretty much 80% of the time there's only men that turn up. You know, women need to take more active interest in politics. Women take a huge interest in the education of their children and all of the other areas that we're involved in. And I think I'd like to see more women involved. You know, 51% of this population is women around the world. It's responsible for 70% of all the spending in the world. And you know what? I'd really like to see the economy a number one women's issue, and I think we need to work more in that area. You know, it's great to see Judy Cinnamon running Enterprise Ireland. First time, you know, it's had the best year ever since it was founded, which is another fine example of women leading places in Ireland.
Okay,
and she was appointed by Fine Gael, just so that you are aware of that. You know, there was a really wasted opportunity with Lapgate.
Yeah.
You know, you see, you're talking about women. You know, like, if Mick Wallace was in here, would you ask him how he felt about what he said about when he called Mary Mitchell O'Connor Miss Piggy?
I think I probably would.
Yes, and Shane Ross, because he was sitting next to him. And now you see Shane Ross and Michael Fitzmaurice setting up what's called a new alliance, and they're going to have their own policies, which in its own way is probably the same as a party. We're going to bring out our manifesto for the next election. I'm sure they will bring out their manifesto. And, you know, they're not calling themselves a party because they don't have to deal with the issue of women, which is 30% of the people that they would have to stand up should be women. And from what I see at the moment, it's all men that's in that alliance. So I think it's a pity that, you know, that you know, I think that's unfortunate.
Okay, but you said Lapgate was a missed opportunity.
It was a missed opportunity from that point of view, that, you know, people saw what happened and, you know, saw the controversy that was over it. It was unfortunate that it happened. I said that at the time. I would have preferred if it didn't happen. You asked me, did I think it will define me? No, is the honest answer.
Your political career, I'm talking about,
yes.
in terms of, you know, what you'll be remembered for. Would
yes.
you like to think that you'll be remembered for?
I'd far.
Shot, perhaps. Or?
Well, we'll see what happens in the future. I'd far more like to be remembered for promoting entrepreneurship and trying to encourage people to set up their own business, which is my real passion, I think, as everybody knows. And I've done a lot of work on the Jobs Committee in that area, and particularly promoting mentoring and bringing in a new mentoring service and using technology to try and help that. That's what I'd like to be remembered for, and that's the work that gets me up in the morning early to continue to doing it.
After that you spoke, I think, very eloquently, as I remember it, about the lack of anything to do in Leinster House for first-time TDs. I mean, kind of being elected and then trying to, you know, and you suddenly realise that, what do I do, kind of thing.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's two questions though for this. I mean, first of all, do you think that Fine Gael, or do you think, you know, maybe political parties generally sometimes ignore people within their party who are quite talented and have skills and expertise that they could be applied to certain areas of the party? Do you think sometimes they're ignored? Do you think that's what happens?
Well, I wouldn't use the word ignored, because I don't think they're ignored. I think the ministers and the government are very busy doing a job that's very demanding. So I don't think it's that. I think the process needs to change. And I have said this before, for me, when I did get elected, that yes, it was a huge shock to find out that, you know, you kind of have to figure it out, and that's all fine. But, you know, again, like, you know, you come with experience and a skill base and so on, and you'd like to use that, because that's what you're elected to do. So you've got to figure out a way to do that, so you go through the committees and so on. I firmly believe that we should all be attached to a department and should work in that department. Not as in, you know, junior minister, we all can be junior ministers or ministers or whatever, but I think we still have, they could be far greater use made of the experience that we have. You spoke about Irish Water. I mean, 2 backbenchers could have been appointed to Irish Water to help, and I'm sure then we wouldn't probably have the controversies that unfortunately happened. So I think there's a wasted opportunity there, because there is a lot of talent around, and it's you know, even our speaking time in the Dáil, you know, the opposition gets far greater speaking time than backbenchers in government do. So, you know, it's not that it's ignoring, it's just, I think, the process and it's probably part of Dáil reform that needs to happen, and how we do that. But you know, I think they do it in the UK. They're called parliamentary secretaries. In fact, I think Enda Kenny's father was parliamentary secretary back in the day. So I think that would be an opportunity, but I think we should have a specific role. For example, again, going back to entrepreneurship, you know, I mean, I'd love to be working in the Department of Jobs, trying to come up with policies to help entrepreneurs and bring my experience into that role, or small business, or in the Department of Finance. And, you know, not, as I said, with a title or with expenses or any of that. I'm not talking about any of that, so I want to make that perfectly clear. I'm just talking about using our experience, and I think that would be very useful.
Okay. Given the system that is currently in place, though, I mean, what advice would you give a first-time TD if they're elected, you know, from your experience 3-4 years ago?
I think I said over the Christmas, chatting to my husband, that I think after this role I could do any job, because it's so varied and so diverse, you know, and you end up in places, you put yourself on the edge on so many cases and on so many different issues. You know, I mean, public speaking was a huge issue for me. I'd never public spoken before in my life, and suddenly you have to go out and you have to stand up with people. People can be quite controversial. People can be, you know, and there's obviously different issues. But you know, it's a hugely outside of it being a huge honour to represent the people. But you just, from a human point of view, you see a whole different, you know, world, maybe that you mightn't have seen in the career I had before this. So and you know, how you can help to change that, and how, given opportunity, people can change. So it's been pretty rewarding in that. It's demanding, there's no point in saying otherwise. Every job is demanding, but I think in this one you're in the public eye all the time. So from that point of view, it's a big change. The hours can be long, but that's not an issue from what you know, hours are long for self-employed people a lot of the time, so on. So yeah, I mean there is, but it's hugely rewarding. So I mean anybody who is interested in politics, it depends I suppose when you come in. I mean I came in from not being in the council, where most people do go in the council, so they've had a taste of it first. So it was a huge change for me.
Okay, a couple of more questions just on a few different issues. Your party colleague Owen Murphy released to you and other colleagues the details of a survey he carried out of backbenchers in relation to political reform, Dáil reform, and the 75% said they would favour the loosening of the party whip. Is that something you'd be in favour of?
I actually, what I think we should do with the whip is, I think we should agree that there will be a whip on every issue that's in our manifesto. That, you know, what the programme for government that we all signed up to. Sorry, after once we got into government with Labour, there was a joint programme for government. So everything that's on that issue, I think there should be a whip on. And if anything else comes up, I think maybe there shouldn't be a whip on it. Because what might be a conscious issue for you may not be a conscious issue for me. So okay, you can talk about the areas of the protection for life, which is probably a conscious issue for everybody, to be fair. But you know, the economy is a conscious issue for me.
Yeah, I mean budget cuts are
conscious. You know, disability is a conscious issue for me. Entrepreneurship is a conscious issue for me. So it depends. So I think that's the way we should solve that.
Okay, so I mean, you would favour perhaps a whip on a major piece of legislation, but what about things like amendments? I mean, some opposition TDs made very reasonable amendments to Irish water legislation that the government voted down because they disagreed with it. I mean, would you favour the loosening of the whip in that respect?
As I said, what I'd favour is in that anything that we've agreed on, there's a whip on. So we've signed up to bring in Irish water, so then it's whipped. But if something comes up that's not in our programme for government, then, you know, because when I signed up to stay in the party, I signed up to the programme for government. And then in order to govern, there has to be rules. So, you know, therefore I'm saying I'm going to agree with what we're going to do for all of these issues. But if something comes up that's not in it, I don't think there should be a whip.
Okay. You sit on the Public Accounts Committee. Do you think it's become a bit too politicised in recent months? And particularly, you know, Mary Lou McDonald's going into the Dáil and reading those names in the Ansbacher dossier into the Dáil record. Do you think that it's being kind of manipulated for political purposes now?
I think some of it has been, and I think it's created a lot of fear, which is unfortunate. I think some of the work that was done in the charity sector, although it exposed salaries and issues like that, I think it has done huge damage. And I think it was outside of our remit, which has now been proved. And I think in relation to those, you know, we should have waited for the charity legislation to be enforced and the charity regulator to be set up and bring the rules in first, and then, you know. So I think that was, yes, I do. I think it, and I think going out publicly, even our chairperson has gone out publicly and spoken about the stuff that's going on in the Public Accounts Committee, and I think that's been unfortunate.
So do you think the PAC is damaged by the actions of the chair and by Mary Lou?
Yes, I think it's been somewhat damaged, but hopefully it can recover now and move on. You know, I mean, there's a lot of new members after being appointed to it, as you know. So, and I think, you know, there's been a huge learning lesson in the sense that, you know, we have been basically, you know, told that we have to act within our remit, and that's our job, is to be the watchdog for the public accounts, be the watchdog for the public purse, you know. And I think that's what we should stick to.
Okay. Finally, Aine Collins, are you prepared for life outside of politics if you lose your seat? What would you do?
Absolutely prepared for life outside of politics. What would I do? I have no idea right now. What would I do? I'd probably go back into business in some shape or form. I'd probably, I'm quite entrepreneurial in my own little way, so I've run my own businesses before, so I'd probably do something like that again. I might even go into become a TV interviewer or a radio interviewer or something like that. Who knows?
You like to get into journalism, broadcasting?
Yeah, well, maybe. Not surely about journalism, but maybe broadcasting. So, you know, there's lots, as I said, after this role, I think I'd be fit for anything.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Thank you.